folks, and welcome to the Non-Diet Yogi podcast. Each month, I invite you to dive deep with me to explore and dismantle the world of big wellness, where spirituality, holistic health, diet culture, white supremacy, and toxic female entrepreneurship collide in a dizzying spectacle of acai berries and whitewashed inner goddess workshops. I'm your host, Casey Conroy, non-diet dietitian, naturopath in training, yoga teacher, and recent strength and conditioning coach in training. Woohoo! And this is episode 16, Blood, Sweat, and Açaí, the Karma of Superfoods. I have just recorded this whole episode for the second time and realized that I was using my built-in computer's microphone instead of my fancy pants amazing microphone. So the quality of this episode isn't as wonderful as I would like it to be, but just as an experiment, I am going to not be a type A perfectionist and re-record it a third time, and instead I'm just going to offer the last recording that I did. So sorry for the poorer sound quality of this episode, but I have a feeling some of you will understand. I've been pretty preoccupied of late. Apart from following the US election proceedings, good news all around with the result, yay. My work has ramped up quite significantly in the last couple of months, and I've also been finishing assessments as the uni semester draws to a close for my naturopathy studies. I guess if you add kids and all the rest of the stuff that comes with life on top of that, the podcast tends to get shoved to the side, and I'm sincerely sorry about that. So last episode, I spoke with the wonderful Katja Weiss Anderson from the Kumbaya Confessional podcast about wellness capitalism. And amongst the many different aspects of wellness capitalism we discussed, over-harvesting of herbal medicines and superfoods was one that we touched on but didn't go into heaps of detail with. So I thought I would share my thoughts on the issue of over-harvesting here. So here we go. Any die-hard yogi, health coach, budding nutritionist, or of course health-conscious supermodel will tell you that your morning smoothie just isn't complete without acai berries, maca powder, spirulina, or chia seeds. But did you know that many far-flung superfoods carry a pretty heavy environmental and social footprint? So what are superfoods? Superfoods are simply foods that have a higher than average nutrient density that generally are marketed as having some kind of very exceptional health benefits, or that claim to do so. So if we're just thinking about foods that have a higher than average nutrient density, this leaves a pretty wide scope for many different foods, and I'll touch on that later. But nowadays, the word superfood brings to mind some relatively expensive powders, capsules, purees, and juice concentrates and stuff like that. You may even think of things like Juice Plus, the little capsules that claim to provide some enormous percentage of your recommended daily requirement for a bunch of nutrients when they actually have maybe a fingernail's worth of beetroot powder, etc. in them, so they don't actually give you that much and cost a buttload. But anyway, coming back to superfoods in general, sedate brown, green, or red powders and lifeless capsules wouldn't be very sexy as standalone items, so these products are generally very cleverly marketed with the usual lethal gamut of cutting-edge research, images of women in bikinis who are conventionally attractive, with just the right amount of exotic ethnicity in the case of superfoods, and those words that appeal to the health nut in many of us, things like organic, pure, clean, paleo, concentrated, anti-aging, antioxidant, and of course free of everything, free of gluten, sugar, dairy, etc. So what makes these superfoods even more irresistible is this inviting concept, I think, of a jam-packed form of nutrition in such a minute amount of food, conveniently packaged in some highly concentrated form. There's this idea that we can get 300% of your RDI, vitamin E, or quercetin in just one little teaspoon or one capsule of this stuff. I mean, what time-poor wellness seeker could resist? The escalating demand for such foods by health-conscious consumers, like Yogis, has let loose this tsunami of superfood marketing and health food store bombardment that we've seen over the last decade or so. And of course, we have to remember that rarity breeds desire. And this is a big part of the appeal of so-called superfoods. Every time I say the word superfoods, I'm saying it with bunny ears or air quotes, okay, guys? So as humans, we tend to thirst for the most exotic, the most expensive, the most foreign version of many things. And this is very clear when it comes to some of the more popular superfoods. Think goji berries from the Tibetan Himalayas, Açaí sourced from the depths of pristine Amazonian rainforests, chia harvest in South American coastal deserts, maca and quinoa from the high Andes of Peru and Bolivia, coconuts and durian from steamy Southeast Asia, noni fruit from Tahiti, and mesquite from Mexico. I'm never 100% sure if I'm pronouncing that properly. Anyway, that means that with these far-flung superfoods, there's a lot of work and resources involved in getting these things from those Andean mountaintops and high Tibetan plateaus into your blender. And this, of course, racks up miles, food miles. The transportation of food contributes a significant percentage of all carbon emissions produced on our planet. It has impacts as far-ranging as the destruction of foreign ecosystems and traditional cultures. When I was researching a final year project during my first degree, I was referring to this report called Livestock's Long Shadow. I was a very devout vegetarian going on vegan, and I was out there to prove that, all kinds of things I won't go into here, but just basically wanted to turn everyone vegan. But in the process of my research, I found that food transportation contributes something like, oh gosh, I can't remember the exact number. Maybe it was 13%, but I'd need to double check. But it was a significant percentage of all carbon emissions produced on our planet. So that kind of applies to anyone who doesn't just grow their own food. And the funny thing, coming back to superfood miles, is that I've found the highest concentration of superfood lovers to be within my own circles of yoga practitioners, clients, and friends who are as environmentally conscious as they are health conscious, usually. So why do many of us continue to buy foods that carry such a huge environmental and social impact? The less than super truth is that superfoods aren't always sustainably harvested. Take quinoa, for instance, which was once a Bolivian farmer's food, and it actually has a history of 7,000 years or so in traditional diets of people living in Bolivia and Peru. But now quinoa is in the pantry of every upper middle class health-conscious Westerner, it seems, and at a high price, and I'm not just talking about the price you pay for quinoa. Due to Western demand tripling prices of quinoa on the global market since 2006, poorer Bolivians can no longer afford their staple grain. And we have to remember that about 80% of Bolivians live below the poverty line. To add insult to injury, the quinoa growing region of Bolivia is now suffering from health issues such as malnutrition, partly because quinoa growers who export their crop now purchase cheaper, refined grains to eat for themselves and their families. Well-intentioned health and ethics-led consumers are unwittingly driving poverty in Bolivia. If you buy quinoa sourced from South America instead of, say, Australia, where we do grow our own quinoa, you are one of these consumers. So please remember to check the packets before you buy. We're not all perfect, but this is something that we can do if we really want to buy quinoa. We can be conscious of this, I think. Similarly, it's not just quinoa. So wild-crafted superfoods such as maca can be damaging to local populations, despite the relatively high prices paid to locals for foraging rights. In the same way, our desire for chocolate, bananas, coffee, and sugar has decimated local cultures and ecosystems in previous centuries. This has been going on for a long time, folks. Ignoring the sentiment that buying a raw superfood smoothie bowl with an $18 price tag absolutely smacks of privilege, do we really need these products in our smoothies and diets? Despite the fact that in many cases we are hurting other humans and impinging upon their basic human rights. And this makes me think of the concept of karma. The way foods, including superfoods, are grown or raised, processed, transported, traded, and prepared has powerful effects on soil, plants, animals, ecosystems, people, of course, and the health of the planet. On farmers, on consumers, on economies, on society as a whole. And this theory of karma that you may be familiar with is one of cause and effect, or of right action. And however, causes do not simply lead to a predictable set of knock-on effects. Karma works in subtle ways, with causes combining in multitudinous complexities to create experience. When you eat something, you, in a way, eat everything that happened to make that food come into existence. You say yes to the hands and systems that allowed that food to come to you. And of course, I'm not saying this to try to make people feel guilty. And of course, some people don't have much control over the foods that they have access to and can eat. I'm thinking of people with accessibility limitations around food, but I'm speaking here to those people who can afford or who do have room on their credit cards for unnecessary items like quinoa or like acai purees. And when we eat something like that, we do say yes to all the systems that allowed that food to come to us. We affirm a certain version of the world. You know, if you choose bananas from a South American plantation located on destroyed rainforest land, employing impoverished workers at a fraction of the wage they should be receiving, using pesticides and shipped long distances using oil-fueled ships, you ever so slightly reinforce this state of affairs. You make it part of your reality, your experience. You say yes to that world. If you instead purchase bananas from a local farm, maybe organic, maybe not, you at least say yes to a pretty different set of conditions. You strengthen community ties and, in a minuscule way, weaken the hold of impersonal food corporations. You say yes to a world that treats water and soil and air and people with respect. Do you rely on a food production system that restores nature and cultivates human consciousness even? Or one that throws nature out of balance, is grown and processed by strangers in a faraway place who are probably being mistreated, and employs monoculture and stuff like that? You know, since we're talking about superfoods, one that perhaps reinforces a lifestyle, a system that reinforces a lifestyle that prioritizes health and fitness over everything else. So this phenomenon called healthism, where basically the only thing we really care about is our perceived wellness, and that we kind of forget about everything else. This this system that leverages privilege and social status to create the illusion of ultimate health by placing a higher price on the most exotic, the most antioxidant dense, and the most sexy sounding and marketable, despite the costs. So look, I'm not attacking superfood smoothies. There's nothing wrong with having some superfoods in your diet if you seriously enjoy them. Like if you like the taste of acai and you love it, you dream about it, then knock yourself out, go for it. Although personally, I think acai kind of tastes like shit, but I've had my fair share of acai bowls. And if you do truly enjoy these things and can afford them, that doesn't make you a bad person for buying an acai bowl or having some quinoa. But if it's purely the health benefits you're going for, you really need not pay 5 times the price that you might be paying for a Bolivian or Peruvian sourced quinoa, especially for what offers, possibly a fraction of the antioxidants, given that the more exotic superfoods are shipped from so far away and stored for months in some cases. Many of these foods are no longer fresh and therefore may have experienced a decrease in antioxidant activity. And, the overall superfoodism kind of is reduced. There are many locally grown, comparatively cheaper superfoods with an unusually high nutrient density if that's what you're going for. And this is where I really, really vouch for having a basic idea of what weeds growing in your area are edible and good for you. So you could pop stuff into your morning smoothie that you can access more readily, in some cases outside your front door maybe, or in your local park, and that costs nothing. And if you want to listen more to myself and another incredible guest talk about accessible wildcrafted foods, I think it's episode 11 that you can go back to, Wildly Accessible Food and Medicine, Foraging Edible Weeds and Bush Foods with Pat Collins. Please go have a listen to that because there are so many alternatives to these exotic, well-marketed superfoods that we could access instead that will give us, probably in my opinion, more of a bounce, more health benefits, and a clearer conscience. So, for example, dandelion greens can be grown in your own backyard easily, and you might not even have to grow them at all. They're a pest for many people, and they weed them and throw them away. Or even things that you may not be growing that are very, very high nutrients. So some cost-effective alternatives. I'll just list a few here. If you wish to gain the health benefits of specific superfoods without remortgaging your house, you could try, instead of spirulina, try spinach. Both of those things are high in antioxidants and iron. Instead of chia seeds, try eggs for an omega-3 hit. Acai you could replace with seasonal berries. Hello, antioxidants. And maca, why not have some pumpkin seeds instead, which both promote reproductive health? Another absolute jackpot for for antioxidants are grounded spices. So things like nutmeg, cloves, cinnamon, turmeric, and mustard actually contain the highest ORAC count, which is a measure of their total antioxidant capacity, the highest ORAC count of any foodstuff you can get. And these things far exceed noni juice or acai berries in terms of their antioxidant capacity. Other superfoods that I'm lucky to have access to here in southeast Queensland, Australia, which is where I live, are locally grown avocados, when they're in season, of course, purslane, Portulaca oleaceae, oleracea. I can never pronounce that properly. But anyway, purslane, which is an edible weed exceptionally high in ALA omega-3s, vitamins and minerals. Sometimes if we go to the coast, we could get locally caught fish. And then, of course, there's edible weeds, which we pretty much lived off when we first moved to the bush, to this block in the bush where, we didn't know where the markets were. And besides the closest supermarket, which was half an hour's drive away. So, yeah, we were living off edible weeds that I would just pick from around the place for, a while, and still do eat those things. So, if you must have quinoa, açaí, or maca, and you are concerned about sustainability and social justice, I suggest just doing your research and vote with your dollar. If you're buying organic chocolate, which of course I eat quite a lot of, I must say, make sure it is fair trade if you can. Check where it's grown and how it's harvested. We just want to be thinking about these things. Remember, we're not aiming for perfection. We're not, I'm not saying that you are what you eat or anything infuriating like that. But as yogis and people who claim to be conscious, etc., it probably wouldn't hurt us to look into this stuff a little bit and, choose wisely. So those are my thoughts. You can actually find these thoughts as an article online on my website blog, funkyforest.com.au, as the Karma of Superfoods, or published by Living Now magazine. And it's also on their website. I'll have the links to these in the show notes. And now, next episode, I will be talking to Phoebe Jobson, who's a naturopath who specialises in HA, which is short for hypothalamic amenorrhea. And I've been waiting for a long time to talk about this. In the next few episodes, we'll actually be focusing on reproductive health for anyone who has a uterus. So we'll be talking about how to boost your fertility, especially if you're in a larger body and you've just been told to lose weight, which would be very, very frustrating and is very frustrating for many of my clients. We'll be talking about periods and whether they are the ultimate sign of health or not. Of course, they are a vital sign, but I have many clients who still have a period who think that because they have a period, they don't need to eat more or address their disordered eating. So I definitely want to talk about that more with you guys. We'll be talking about sex drive and the real links between fertility and weight, as well as talking about what happens when we have no period or a disappearing period in my next episode or maybe the one after that. So guys, thank you once again for tuning in. Thank you for your patience with me as I got through the last couple of months of intense life stuff. And looking forward to you joining me again. If you love the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple iTunes. To do so is really easy. From the show page, just scroll down until you see the rating and review section with the 5 stars. For even more love, you can become a Patreon of the podcast for $2 a month and receive non-diet yogi bonuses in addition to the podcast. Patreons can access a growing library of goodies, including offers, PDF guidebooks, audio, meditation, herbal giveaways, and guest offerings.
Thank you for being here and for straddling the tricky edges of yoga land and diet culture with me. I hope this podcast encourages you to compassionately and continuously question the ways that contemporary yoga is unfolding and interacting with other big forces in the world, to develop a discerning mind and open heart, and to skillfully dodge the diet BS that often comes along with studio culture. Like you, I'm eager to keep learning and sharing, and I put all relevant links in the show notes. You can find my blog, online nutrition counselling services, and lots more at funkyforest.com.au. yogi's.com.au. While you're there, make sure to download my free ebook, A Modern Yogi's BS-Free Guide to Wellbeing. It's a light-hearted, easy read with my top 6 tips on dodging diet culture crap in the yoga world, whilst creating sustainable and balanced health from the inside out. If you love the podcast, please consider supporting my work at patreon.com/non-diet-yogi. There are some pretty rad rewards there, such as exclusive content, discount codes, giveaways, and the ability to chat with me. As more episodes roll out, I'll be adding even more fun bonuses, such as my non-diet yogi cookbook and mini courses. You can access most of the goodies at the lowest level, which is just $2 US a month, or around $2.90 Australian dollars. Like most mamas, I'm ridiculously busy parenting, working, studying, and all the rest. I've recorded a bunch of episodes, and some of these have required 5 separate takes just to get a whole episode done, as I need to wake up before my little ones to do it, and they get up very early. So I'm crossing my fingers that the Patreon will give me the financial capacity to keep doing this. Another way to support is to head over to iTunes and subscribe and review the podcast. That would be so awesome. Thank you. The in and outro song is Evening Glow by John Anderson. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.